Welcome everyone. It's so much easier to make these breakfasts now that it's on Zoom. We could get used to this, I guess.
No.
Nice to see you all. This morning we have some guests that I've been actually meaning to ask to the breakfast for years, and by happy chance, it works with their schedule to try something new on Zoom. And so I'd like to welcome the senior Troupe from Lifelong and their fearless leader, Sue Pergot. So welcome.
Thank you, Zach, and nice to see you all. I do recognize Myra, who has seen us perform and probably seen these stories. So, hi, I'm Sue Pergot, and I'm the director and sometimes performer with the Troupe. Before I tell you about the Troupe, I'd like to introduce you to the members of the Troupe in the order that they'll be reading their stories. And this is not the full Troupe. This is, should we mute everybody? Yeah. So mute yourselves or we'll mute you. I seem to be getting feedback. Okay. Okay, so they will raise their hand and they will acknowledge when I say. So the first person reading her story will be Emily. Then Mark will be reading his story. Then Carol, Mike, and Deirdre. So we have 5 members of the Troupe. So let me tell you a little something about the Troupe. The Senior Troupe of Lifelong presents what we call Living History Theater, which this morning has the theme of memorable meals. So while you're eating your breakfast, we're going to talk about memorable meals. These stories were written in 2019 and were performed live several times that year. We've been performing Living History Theater as a troupe for more than 21 years. We feature stories from the troupe's lives that are both humorous and serious, and our Living History Theater, when in person, is presented as choral theater with both soloists and a choir. And the soloists are the people reading their stories, and the choir is the troupe that adds in voices and sounds and movement. But because we're doing this live, we're presenting our stories as a reading without the troupe input, except for Mark and Deirdre, who are in the same house. So you'll get a sense of how the troupe interacts with the stories when they do theirs. This project is supported with a grant from the Community Arts Partnership. After the reading, there'll be time for you to ask questions of the troupe members or share your memories of memorable meals, including maybe this breakfast. The way we start performances when we're live is usually with a brief troupe warm-up. So I'm going to invite you to join us from your chairs just to do a little warm-up. Even though you're eating breakfast, you can do this. So let's have everybody, if you can, just stretch your arm up, raise one arm up, and raise the other arm, and just stretch and stretch and stretch. Okay, and then shake out your hands. Just shake out your arms, your hands, your shoulders. Just do a whole upper body shake out. Ooh, shaking it out. All right. And just drop your head forward and just roll it to the right and just roll it to the left and drop it forward. Roll it to the right, roll it to the left and drop it forward and then raise it up. Great. Okay, and now the last thing we're going to do, and because we're all muted, you can do it as loud as you want. We're going to make some faces and some sounds so that we feel kind of warmed up. All right, so everybody make a face of some kind, and then with a sound. Wah, 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 wah. Somebody isn't muted. Wah, 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 wah. Okay. Wow. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Let's give yourselves a hand, everybody. Great job. Okay, so after we finish reading you our stories, we'll have a little, you can talk with us, and I will tell you about a workshop that I'm going to be doing with the seniors at GIAC in March. So let us start. We're going to make sure everybody is muted, and we're going to start with Emily. Go ahead, Emily. Go.
Just a minute. I'm getting it set up here. It was 1960, and my husband and I had been married less than a year. We lived in a fifth-floor walk-up apartment in a seamy section of Chicago. Tom was a second-year medical student, and I was a very green sixth-grade teacher in Skokie, a Chicago suburb. Every day I got up at 5 a.m., tiptoed around in the dark so as not to wake my husband, downed a quick breakfast, then joined a carpool for the half-hour drive to Skokie. Teaching was exhausting. My students were obstreperous, and I was a poor disciplinarian. I looked forward to weekends the way prisoners look forward to parole. Halfway through the year, I became pregnant, an unexpected but happy event for both my husband and me. Now, most prospective fathers are content to leave the care of their pregnant wives in the capable hands of a specialist, but not fathers-to-be who are medical students. Medical students seek out all the possible dangers concealed in pregnancy and fear the worst. My husband took it upon himself to monitor my every move, constantly checking to see if I was eating right, taking the correct vitamins, not getting overtired, and not drinking that much looked forward to glass of wine after teaching all day. One Saturday night, I decided to fix my husband a special dinner. After all, his days were exhausting too. He studied hard and was in a constant state of anxiety about performing well and getting good grades. This meal would far surpass our usual hamburgers or tuna salad. Consulting my new Joy of Cooking cookbook, I decided on stuffed pork chops with all the trimmings. I lit candles and set the table with our good china instead of our everyday dishes. I poured wine for him and ginger ale for me. The pork chops were delicious, and everything seemed to be going well when suddenly my husband stopped eating and set his fork down. He narrowed his eyes and gave me a suspicious look. "Did you put salt in these pork chops?" "Of course," I replied. "It was in the recipe." His face darkened. "How could you do that? You know you're not supposed to have salt when you're pregnant." No, I'm a very restrained person when it comes to emotional outbursts. Whatever anger I felt up to that time in my life had always been internalized, never openly expressed. I don't know whether it was hormones or simply fatigue, but my husband's remark really got my hackles up. "All I wanted was to fix you a nice dinner," I said, choking back tears, "and all you can do is find fault with it. So what if I added a little salt to make it taste better?" And with that, I grabbed the pork chop off my plate and threw it at him. He ducked just in time, and the pork chop, dripping with gravy, splattered against the wall behind him. My husband was so shocked that he burst into laughter, which added even more fuel to my anger, and I refused to speak to him for the rest of the night. In spite of the tiny bit of salt, I continued to surreptitiously sprinkle on my food over the next 7 months. Our son was born, strong and healthy.
In the mid-70s, my wife Deirdre and I were in New York City visiting her recently widowed mother, Florence. That evening, we dined at a fancy Chinese restaurant, the Gold Coin, a favorite of the theater crowd and celebrities. My mother-in-law's good friend Rita joined us. Deirdre couldn't stand Rita, and once, tripping on LSD, she distilled her dislike into a crayoned image she tacked up on the kitchen bulletin board. Rita as an evil witch, squatting to urinate. That night, we listened as my mother-in-law and Rita vented a long run of negative feelings about the people they knew, their friends and relatives. We listened politely, but we had little in common with these two older women. I ate my food and tried not to pay much attention to my table mates. Fortunately, there was a distraction close at hand. A loud, raucous group of people at the next table. Maybe they were celebrating something. Maybe, whatever the reason, they were over the top in their exuberance, while the other diners in the large restaurant seemed not to mind. The racket meant it wouldn't be necessary to carry on much obligatory conversation with my mother-in-law and Rita. They griped and kvetched until inevitably their gaze settled on the next table and they began to aim their barbs at close range.
Some people just don't know how to behave in public. It's disgusting when there are drunks in a nice restaurant. Who do these loudmouths think they are anyway?
Finally, Rita lost her patience, pushed back her chair, and stomped towards her target. I suppose she felt she was upholding the rights of other patrons as she scolded the surprised group. Then she marched back to her seat and plopped down in righteous triumph. But did it end there?
No.
Things got crazy, and it happened fast. A middle-aged guy from that boisterous table jumped up and followed Rita. He came right over to me, the only man at our table. Maybe we should settle this out on the sidewalk. That was the way real men handled a confrontation back then, just a free flow of fists and testosterone. Of course, I stood up to deal with this challenge. I saw the man's fists were clenched, and he sure had the look of someone about to throw punches. But in that tense moment, I recognized who this angry man was. Not just anybody, but my God, it was Rocky Graziano, who once held the middleweight championship of the world. Rocky, the TV star who traded jokes with Martha Ray, and Paul Newman played him in the movie Somebody Up There Likes Me. So there it was, a desperate scene. Rocky and me standing toe-to-toe in the ring at the Gold Coin Chinese restaurant. What was I supposed to do? First, I took a deep breath and exhaled. But suddenly, miraculously, it didn't matter anymore. The bile melted. Rocky Graziano saw I was smiling at him with a look of awe and admiration. I gave him a quick palms up, as if to say, "What are we doing here?" He exhaled and nodded, perhaps realizing I wasn't the one who challenged him. End of confrontation. For a moment, Rocky's eyes closed on Florence and Rita, a dirty look. He shook his head as he turned back to his own group. Then Rocky sent a bottle of champagne to our table.
I just go? Hello?
Go, Carol.
Oh, yeah. I cannot I cannot remember a time in my life when Thanksgiving was not my favorite holiday. I suppose it began in childhood, when Thanksgiving was a perfect day. The day started early with Ma getting the turkey ready for roasting. I helped her make the stuffing, peel the potatoes, fix up the relish tray, set the table with our only linen tablecloth and our best china bought with S&H green stamps. Every task had the feeling of a precious ritual. The atmosphere was bright with anticipation. When dinner was ready, the whole family and a guest or two sat down. The brothers were always joking and teasing. Pa was in a good mood. Ma was presiding over everything with a joyful competence. The air was thick with the smell of sage dressing, succulent turkey, fresh pumpkin pie. Eating, laughing, and often singing, we were at our family best. There was no day like it. There was no meal so satisfying. Now, throughout my adult life, I have been seized from time to time, no matter where I was living, with the mysterious and urgent need to replicate that experience. And every time I did it, I did everything from turkey to stuffing to giblet gravy, mashed potatoes, and relish tray. No help requested, no help accepted. Each time I became one with what I was doing. No past, no present, no future, only that moment, that meal. The last such time I recall, I was living in a small apartment on First Avenue in New York City. For several years before that, I had been pretty much a recluse. But that year I had a good job and had made a few friends at work. I invited Pat and Danny, Diane and Ed, and Ava. I bought a large oak table that pretty much filled the apartment. I set the table with matching dinnerware. The day began with rinsing down the turkey with salt water, making the stuffing, peeling the potatoes, everything in order. When my guests arrived, I made the introductions and popped open a bottle of champagne. As I worked in my little galley kitchen, I listened with pleasure to the sound of my friends chatting, joking, teasing my dog. They were all getting along. I was pleased. When they sat down to the table, I brought out the platter of turkey and stuffing, served the potatoes, put out the gravy boat. I may have sat down for about 10 minutes to eat with them, but mainly I was back and forth to the kitchen while the guests talked and laughed. All satisfied, deep into the afternoon, my guests began to leave. Without missing a beat, I went about cleaning up, washing the dishes, scrubbing the pots and pans, putting away the leftovers. I walked the dog, and home again, I took a sip of champagne and sat down. They were all gone. I was alone. I had hardly spoken to them at all, and now they were gone. And it was okay. I still felt their presence, their joviality, and their lively chatter. It all lingered in the air, and I was satisfied. They had fed me, and I had fed them. I don't know if any of them remember that meal, but I've never forgotten it. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
My mother was a great cook. She and her friends would often compete for the best cook of the month. My mother was great at cooking Italian and French recipes. My favorite dish of hers was bouillabaisse and cioppino. I also remember loving her sweet and sour eggs. The only problem with her cooking was that she often used dairy products. So often when I came home from college, I would get sick. Then I discovered I was lactose intolerant. My father, who didn't cook, took me to Cuba right before Castro took over. Bombs were going off in the streets of Havana. Because of this, we took a tour that took us into the area of Cuba where pineapples were growing. There we stopped at a thatched roof restaurant where we both had arroz con pollo, chicken and rice. It was delicious. Since then, exotic foods became an area for me to explore. When I lived in New York City, while I was getting my master's degree, I would often go to the nearest Cuban Chinese restaurant. What a fantastic blend of cultures. It seems that many Chinese families left Cuba after Castro took over and moved to America. Pollo a la brasa, roasted chicken, is another dish that's a favorite of mine that I enjoy at Pio Pio, a Peruvian restaurant in New York City that serves many dishes that seem exotic to me. Often after Labor Day, my wife would spend a week in Cape Cod. My brother was a fisherman there. As a celebration of our family gathering, he would arrive with a full bag of clams, oysters, and several kinds of fish. We would have a local fish store steam delicious lobster for us. After our last trip to Cape Cod, I hadn't had lobster for 3 years, but several Novembers ago, we took a last-minute jaunt to Maine. I was able to indulge. As for me, my wife says I'm a good cook. I make a great kale soup, although I don't think it's as good as the Portuguese kale soup served on the Cape. Well, now I've made myself very hungry.
In 1950, when I was 5 years old, on the night before Thanksgiving, my father's commuter train was rear-ended by another train moving at full speed. 77 people were killed, and many were seriously injured. My father, along with many others, was thrown from the train. He spent the cold November night lying on the ground, listening to rescue workers moving among the bodies, saying things like, "It's all stiffs over here." Badly injured and in terrible pain, my father tried to speak, tried to move something to attract their attention, but no one saw or heard. Then, at daybreak, a priest moved among the bodies, administering last rites. As he approached, my father moved his hand. The priest saw him and called for help.
There's someone alive over here.
So my father's life was saved on Thanksgiving Day. And after his long, difficult recovery, we celebrated in grand style every year, hosting elaborate meals with other survivors of the accident and their families as guests. Thanksgiving was the most important holiday in our family. We had a lot to be thankful for. But one year, I think I was 10 or 11, we had Thanksgiving dinner at a restaurant. We must have been without a maid at that time. And since my mother didn't cook
At all.
going to a restaurant was our only option. Now, going out to eat wasn't a big deal for us. Because my parents paid someone to cook, our dinners at home were somewhat formal, multi-course meals at which we were served by the maid. Going out to eat mostly meant Chinese or Italian restaurants on the maid's night off.
This was different.
Not only was it our sacred Thanksgiving holiday, but my parents made reservations at
The Arbor Inn.
not the fanciest restaurant in town, but to my parents, it was
A Goyish place.
serving what we now might call wasp food. We were Jewish, and Jews didn't go to places like the Arbor Inn. So it was clear that we had to be on our best behavior, that we had to be a credit to our people. The joyous celebrations of survival that marked Thanksgiving at home would be out of place at the Arbor Inn. We were all tense, dressed up, minding our manners, afraid to do the wrong thing, wondering whether the other diners were judging us and missing our usual Thanksgivings at home. The salad course arrived. My mother picked up the cruet of salad dressing and gave it a good shake, but the top was not firmly attached and flew off scattering vinaigrette in all directions, much of it onto the bald head of a man at the next table. My sister shrieked.
Oh, no!
The waitresses stopped in their tracks. The whole room froze. My mother jumped up to apologize, her face purple with shame. So much for our best behavior. But the man wiping his head clean had been drinking a lot, so he thought it was all quite funny.
Don't worry about it!
His laughter broke the tension and we all cracked up. Of course, back then, there were no cell phones to record the moment. Never again would we celebrate Thanksgiving at a restaurant.
Okay, well, that is 5 of there were 7 stories with that particular show. That's 5 of the stories. And I don't know how you work this, Zach. Does everybody unmute at the same time? Or what we'd like to do is if anybody have any questions for the troupe, or, we'd love to hear from you, any memorable meals you might have. So Zach, do you unmute everybody? Do people unmute themselves? How does it work?
Well, people can unmute themselves. They have that power. So just try not to step on each other if you're going to make a comment, but feel free to share and respond to those.
Does anybody, I guess you could just sort of raise your hand. Does anybody have a question for the troupe? So, okay, so I'll just talk a little about how we come up with these themes and how it works, or how it used to work. Everything has changed in the pandemic, but the way it works is the troupe would get together and we would brainstorm a list of themes, maybe about 25 themes, and then we would vote on them. And we would vote down to the theme that everybody wanted. I had no say in this. The troupe actually picked the themes. So this theme got picked, memorable meals. Everybody, thought about it. They went home, wrote a story about memorable meals, came back to our next class and read their story. And the way we work is that people comment on the stories. This made sense. This didn't make sense. This was too long. And so we help each other refine the stories and make them understandable. And then once we like the way the story is, we start adding in troupe members to say things, to do motions, things like that. I am actually going to give it a try on Zoom. We're going to get together, and anyone in this room is invited to join us. We're going to get together in March, and we're going to pick a theme, and we're going to write stories. And on Zoom, we're going to try and create a theater piece that I think I'm going to tape and then turn into a film instead of having a live session, so that we can have more feedback from the troupe. So anyway, we're going to see. We're going to try working with Zoom, but that's how we work. Any questions?
I would just like to clarify something.
Sure.
Maybe you said this already, but all the stories that we write are true stories. They're things that happened from our lives. They're not
Right. Right. So the focus of the troupe is stories from our lives. So that, so that makes it easy to think about a story, and it could be whatever you think about the theme. It's totally up to you how you write about it. So I'll ask, yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about, or a few of the themes that you've done these stories on. I did movies, I think, once, right? What else is there?
Yes. We did movies, jump in, troupe, if you can remember. We did adventure. We've done travel. We've done beginnings or endings. We've done nicknames. So the troupe started out almost 22 years ago in a slightly different form. And we did lots of stories about people's names and things like that. We did one whole story about hairdos. So it really depends on what the troupe picks. You know, again, I have no say. We come up with lots of different themes, and then everybody votes, and we get it down to a theme that most people vote on. So, okay, so troop members, what is it? What do you like most about the troop? Either Zoom, either virtually or when it was in person.
Well,
I always say it's because I love,
when it's in person, we have a lot of fun with each other. The rehearsals and the work that we do on the stories and the weirdness of the people who are involved. It's a lot of fun.
Carol, you were going to say something?
yeah, I was gonna say, I always say I love talking about myself. But I also enjoy hearing I like everybody in the group. I always look forward to seeing them and meeting them. But I really like talking about myself.
How much
think we
experience
all-
do you all, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
How much
I-
experience do you all have doing various theater and performing? Zero.
Right. So Deirdre had none, Mike had none. So the troupe is really for anyone with totally no experience. You don't need experience to come in and work. And on Zoom, it's going to be a challenge for all of us to be working together and coming up with stories. So, and you don't have to have any experience writing either, because you come up with a theme and we can help you pull it together. So it's open for everyone. We're also hoping to make this Zoom session that we're starting in March with the senior troupe to be more intergenerational. So we're asking, people from different ages can join us and tell their stories. We're going to have a student. We hope Emma from Ithaca College is going to join us, and we're definitely looking forward to that. Unfortunately, I'm Instacart shopping at the same time. And my
Shame on
Instacart-
you.
My Instacart person is texting me. So somebody else talk for a second.
Well, I could say that when I came into the troupe, I had no theater experience, but I'd always wanted to be in a play or have some connection to the theater. And this, since I'm very shy, I had never wanted to audition. But this gave me a chance to do some theater in a very comfortable group, a very accepting group. And it's really been fun. It's given me a little more confidence about being in front of people.
Oh, Emily, you're a charming addition to the group.
Oh, Carol.
I see a hand up on Carol. Carol, are you?
I just wanted to say that the stories are very beautifully done. They're very tight. There's nothing extra in them. They're just, I'm overcome with them. They're really terrific.
Hello.
Thank you so much.
Hello.
Well, one of the things that I do, I've been a director, performer, a writer, all kinds of things in theater for more than 40 years. And one of the things that I'm really, really, really passionate about is rehearsal and getting things to the place where they really work and that they're understandable. So thank you. Yeah, we work hard on this. And in the end, it really does pay off because the stories are quite good. And everybody really works hard on them. So thank you.
Yeah, they're really interesting. I mean, it's beautiful.
So do any of you see yourselves being able to do this kind of thing? Because we would really like to have we're really open to having some new members join us in March as we try and do a Zoom stories. apart from that, I have agreed with Zach to come to this group, to the seniors at GIAC, and do a workshop with you on March, I think we decided on March 3rd. Yeah, March 3rd.
March
Yep.
3rd is it, yep.
Yep. And you can see what it's like. What we'll do is a few on Zoom improv exercises, which actually are fun and we can do. And then, before that day, I'll pick a theme and you all can write a short story based on that theme and we'll share the stories that day. So, and then really, I do invite anyone who's interested in joining the troupe as we create a bigger story to let Zach know, and he can email me, and I will invite you to join the troupe. We would love it.
I really liked the part when, the two people were responding to each other's story. It made it so much more alive.
And when the troupe is live, the troupe does that. The whole troupe will respond, or one person has a role, or one of the things in like Emily's story, she talked about her unruly class. So what the troupe did as a body is acted out an unruly class. And that just really adds a lot. We were like, and that really adds a lot to the story. Well, we couldn't do that for you today, but we're going to try and figure out a way to do it on Zoom, record it, and then I'll make a film from it, put it together and show it as a film. So, yeah, it's great when we're in person. I look forward to the day we can do that again. But meantime, I hate to give up telling stories.
Mhm.
I wanted to mention that the last one that we did before this was about movies, and Sue put it together into a video with clips of the old movies that we were talking about in our stories. And Sue, if you could send the link to that to Zach.
I did.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure I did, Zach, right? Where'd you go, Zach?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
I can share it with everyone else. They can get an idea. Yeah, I'll share that.
Great. Okay, so you'll get an idea. Although that was done during the pandemic. The troupe came to my backyard. I videotaped them all telling their stories, and then I put it together as a film. I'm also a filmmaker, so I get to do the two things I love the most, which is theater and film together. Also, one of the things that we used to do when we were live is when we were finished with a story, a season, we would go to, and Lauren would videotape us. And so there should be a videotape, I will look for it, of the troupe telling the story about memorable meals. And I'm assuming somewhere I have that link, and I will send that link to Zach, and then you can see the troupe performing this as a whole. We are gonna do it on Zoom. We are gonna make it work. I've seen a lot of theater work on Zoom, and I think we can do it.
And I think that while not ideal, Zoom works for this type of storytelling fairly well. It's well suited for that kind of a narrative and one person or two people speaking. So,
yeah, it's not well suited for a troupe though. So, but I'm gonna do it so that we'll do it. I'll record it and I'll put it together in a film, and then it'll work. So we should be able to have a pretty good version by the time we're done. We perform around. We perform at McGraw House. We perform at Lifelong. We performed at the library. And this spring, Community Arts Partnership is having an event called Spring Rights. It's going to be all virtual. And that's what we're putting this together for. Hopefully we're going to be part of Spring Rights, which we have been in the past. And this piece will then be online. Any other comments, questions?
You guys are terrific.
Thank you.
You
So what-
really are.
So what themes would interest you all?
Trips,
Say that again?
Birthday
trips,
parties,
vacations.
Parties.
Asians.
Anyone else?
First day of school, 1,000 years ago.
Can you remember that?
Yay.
You can. Whoa, I'd like to hear that one. That's great.
Blizzards or big storms.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
Be great.
Yeah. How about pandemic?
yes.
Too soon still, too soon.
Maybe. We're living it. We don't have to tell it. Yeah. So,
So enjoyable, though. I mean, oh, I love the stories. And they're real. That's really nice.
yeah. Yeah, that they really happened. Yeah.
Yes.
They're very funny.
Yeah, that's the other thing. We like to use humor, even though some stories can be very deep and dark. Like Deirdre started off a kind of, very sad, and then ended up pretty funny.
Do you like to have new members join the troop?
Oh yes, we are looking for new members. Absolutely, and it will be virtual. Everything we're going to do for the next 6 months, or at least 4 months, will be virtual. And if you're interested, please let Zach know, and he will send me your email address, and I will communicate with you and tell you when it's going to be. We haven't decided on a time yet. We're going to work on that right now. Later today, actually, I'll be sending an email to people. Usually it's on Thursdays, but we can't do Thursdays. So we're going to figure out a new time to be working. And if you let Zach know pretty quickly, I can talk with you and we can invite you to join. We'd love to have new people. Again, no theater experience required, no writing experience, just stories.
Have a life.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Need.
I think some of the people in our regular senior group would be interested. I would be.
That would be great, Sally. We would
Yeah.
love to have you. Great. That'd be really good. Yeah, if you would, everybody who's in your usual senior group is not here today. Is that correct, Zach?
There's maybe 30 or so people that I see from time to time on Zoom. In the entire group, it's 150, but they're just not all online.
Right. So maybe I should send you I'll send you a description
Yes.
of what we plan to do, and you could
Yes.
send that to everyone. That'd be great.
Yes. Yeah. That's a good
Is
idea.
this being recorded, Zach?
Yes. You'll be able to
Yeah, I
watch
had
this on. You'll be able to watch this on YouTube by the end of the day. I'll share it on Facebook and I'll email and Sue will also get a link so everybody can watch it.
That would be great. I came in late. I had trouble getting on, so I'd like to see the stories I missed.
Sure.
And
All
I'll
right,
also I'll send you the link to the actual performance that we did in 2019.
So
Wonderful.
I'll be sharing a bunch of links of past performances and information about the group, and then hope that we get many of you to show up next month on the 3rd. I think we set 10 a.m. as the starting time, and I think I want to thank Sue especially for making this happen, and the whole troop for telling their stories, and I appreciate everybody else for just showing up and checking it out. So
Yes.
I'll wrap it up unless there's any final thoughts.
Thank you all for coming, and it would be great to have you join us. And also, I'd like to see you on March 3rd when I do a class just for you. So this is great. Thank you so much. Thanks, Zach. Thanks a lot. Thank you all. Good
Thank
job.
you, Sue. So we're next Thursday, we're doing trees, right?
Right.
I think.
Yes.
Oh, okay. See you then.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Great